Welcome, everyone. My name is Marina Antunes, president of Spark CG Society and the ACM Vancouver ACM SIGGRAPH chapter, Festival Director for Spark Animation. I'm very excited to welcome you to our Meet the Filmmaker session and this conversation with Amy Bench, the director of More Than I Want to Remember, which was awarded a special mention documentary prize at Spark Animation. Amy, welcome to Spark.
Thank you so much for having me, Marina.
It's so lovely to get a chance to speak with you. And I wanted to start by congratulating you on the film, which is really powerful and a really beautiful story. But before we talk a little bit about the film, I wanted to find out a little bit more about you because you're a really interesting storyteller. When did you know you wanted to tell stories?
Oh man, that's a good question. I don't know that there was ever like a special spark or moment that happened, but I think as a child, I've always been an observer of the world around me. I loved drawing and taking photos as a child. And my career actually started in engineering, but it was just not satisfying to me. I always wanted to do something more creative. And so in the evenings, I would work in the dark rooms at Kodak. I was an engineer at Eastman Kodak, the film manufacturer, and they had dark rooms for employees. And so I would train on that. We got to print using color dark rooms, which at the time, there's hardly any color dark rooms left to the general public. And those were some of the few and they were the only ones in Rochester that I knew of. But I also took classes, or I took a couple of art classes at RIT, or the Rochester Institute of Technology. And my art teacher assigned us a storyboarding exercise. And I think that one moment might be the point where I was like thinking more about moving images and how you tell a story through a series of moving images versus what I had been doing, which is still photography. So I think thinking about telling stories through a series of edits in that exercise was the time that got me interested in making a film. And I made a couple of small projects on my own, and then I applied to film school, and I haven't looked back since.
It's interesting that I'm curious about how you ended up in as a cinematographer.
I think it was also the image making when I was in grad school. So I went to film grad school. It was an MFA program at the University of Texas at Austin. And it's a program that is basically a directing program, but also your fellow students, your classmates, your cohort become your crew members. And so I always wanted to shoot. I didn't want to just direct. I think I was actually more comfortable behind the camera and figuring out how to visualize a story when I first started school. And that was just the career path that I followed when I got out of school. I don't know that anybody really knows how you start a directing career. So a lot of people have a skill like editing or producing or writing or camera. And I just fell in love with the camera. And so after doing camera for a number of years, which I still do, I work as a cinematographer, primarily in the documentary space, but I also do some branded work, and I've done some fiction films, features, and shorts. I decided that I wanted to start making my own films again after, that's what I went to school for. And it's really exciting to be able to help the vision in all areas, not just the visual, but the story as well.
So why animation?
I know it is an interesting choice for a cinematographer to go towards animation. Something I'm still trying to wrap my head around, but I got inspired to start helping to add to the conversation about immigration because I live in Texas, and after Trump got elected in 2016, a lot of the rhetoric was around immigration. And I thought it was important to contribute to that and use my skills as a filmmaker to help share personal stories. And as a woman, I was interested in female forward stories about what people went through to come to this country. And so the first film I did was A Line Birds Cannot See. And I found I'm actually really comfortable talking to people in a more conversational, informal way, with just a microphone. And so I started the research process for that film by interviewing different women about their experiences. And then Adilsa, the woman in that film, I met with her several times, and I just felt more free making a film that way because it started with an audio story, and then I could develop it from there. And I feel that animation is a wonderful art form that allows a viewer to experience emotions in a way that maybe live action visuals just don't approach. You know, you can get much more internal. Um, you can really, I think, as a viewer, focus on the words that you're hearing, and the visuals kind of bring you into this other experience and maybe even bring you closer to that person. Um, and so it's an art form that I've really enjoyed working in. And so when I was finishing up the run of that film, I had decided already that I wanted to do another one, and I wanted to work with another um, woman who had come to this country, and I found Mugeni, who is the lead in More Than I Want to Remember. So when I started working with her, I already knew that the film was going to be animated. I didn't actually know that when I first started doing this. I just started with an audio recorder and knew I would make a film somehow. I thought it would be mixed media or something. um, and I also wanted to work with a female animator, and that's when I found Maya Edelman, who did the animation design for the film.
And so you touched on a couple of things there. The research process is clearly something that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. How did you find Mugeni?
I found Mugeni through an organization that is one of three major agencies in the US that provides placement for unaccompanied refugee minors. When Mugeni came to the US, I think she was 16. Um, and the US has a resettlement program for people who are separated from their parents. And uh, there is a journalist at the New York Times does a lot of immigration stories, and she did one about these two families in Michigan who who fostered and adopted refugee children. They were boys. The story, and when I read their stories, they were so visual to me, um, and I was like, I think it would be worth reaching out to her to see if she ran across anybody else in her research. And so she pointed me to Bethany Christian Services, which is a lot of the resettlement agencies in the US are Christian based, they're faith based. And they were really excited because they had actually talked to Mugeni about writing an op-ed about her experience. And so they introduced me to Mugeni, and she was really excited about the idea to make a film because she felt that it was through the generosity of just a few people after that horrible attack that she is here today and that she's doing as well as she is. And she wants people to know that everyone, you and I and anyone who sees the film, just by giving someone $5 or being kind, that will get paid forward, either to yourself or your children. But like without that kindness, destinies like Mugeni's wouldn't be possible. So that's why she wanted to participate and help tell her story. And yeah, so it's through her resettlement agency that I was able to find her.
How long were the interview processes with Mugeni before you had enough
Um,
material that you thought you were ready to make the film?
that one was shorter because I think we knew a little bit about her story before I flew up to Michigan in January of 2020. And I only had 2 days. I had a baby at home. I had two kids. And so I cut it really close. And I also didn't want to take too much of Mugeni's time. So we interviewed 2 mornings, for probably about 2 hours each, and ended up maybe with 3 hours of interview material. But I think because I had done the previous film, A Line Birds Cannot See, I think it was more clear what we would focus on with Mugeni's story. And so we didn't cover her entire life, but just a little bit about her backstory and a little bit about what happened, and mostly what she ran across on her journey and what she was doing now. So basically, we interviewed her um, twice about
Wow.
her story. And then because of the pandemic, I couldn't really go back and do any pickups. I thought I might need pickups, but I think her story was strong enough. And, the visuals, you don't have to say every single thing. The visuals also contribute. So I think the interview material was so rich the first time around that we basically just used those 3 hours of interviews to make a 14.5 minute film.
And can you talk a little bit about your work with Maya? Because this film looks quite a bit different than your first film. So I'm curious about how you met her and then how you developed the actual look of the film, which is so beautiful and so vibrant and colorful. And it's almost at odds with the story that you're telling.
Yeah, it's true. So I think I had heard about Maya when I was traveling with the previous film, and I met another filmmaker who I knew worked with a lot of animators. And I just asked him, do you know any women animators that you think I should like look at? And he mentioned Maya. And this was like in May of 2019, I think. And then later that year, so I went to her website and I didn't have a project yet. I just knew that I would like to probably make this a series. Later that year, I guess in November, the film played at Doc NYC, which is a documentary film festival in New York. And we were in the same program because it was a documentary program, but they were all animated films. I didn't get to meet her because after the Q&A was over, everybody kind of dissipated and I had friends there. And so when I looked up, Maya was gone, but I reached out to her over email once I had met Mugeni and asked if she was interested. And so she agreed to do the design of the film. And then I would need to hire a separate team of animators because she hadn't animated a film that long before on her own. And in terms of like the visual style, I think Maya has a very recognizable style. Her color palette is, I call it limitless, but but it is very vibrant. I think she has a very great eye for color. And one of the favorite things that she does throughout the film is the skin tones change in different settings, which I really love. Like some of the blues and purples on Mugeni's skin are just like so extraordinary to me. And I think that's something that Maya naturally brings. And then Mugeni herself is very interested in fashion and dresses very colorfully. So I shared a lot of images of Mugeni that her foster mom shared with me so that Maya could see like the clothing that she was attracted to. And Maya also did research on her own about different patterns and took cues from that. So we basically wanted each scene to have a different feel. And we started off, Maya really wanted to start working with the most emotionally resonant sections of the film first and then go backwards. So I think the moment when Mugeni's village is attacked is the first thing that that she designed, and that we started animating with the animators. And the next one, it could have been the dream sequence, but we sort of we went for the intense moments first and then backtracked. And we were working off of storyboards too. I think I skipped that step, but yeah, I think the colors, Maya had seen the last film and I think wanted to improve upon the visuals. I think the animator was really talented, but that was also one person doing the designs and the animation for A Line Birds Cannot See. And I think the color wasn't as rich as she is interested in. And I also love to have rich colors. I think just because a story it covers hard topics, I think you don't need to do it in all drab colors or all black and white. I think it's actually kind of nice to bring color to these moments. And that's one thing I love about the film too, is how colorful it is, and how vibrant. It just really brings you in.
Why was it important to you to work with a female animator this time around?
Um, I was looking for a female the first time too, and didn't really run across anyone that resonated. I think as this comes, maybe tangentially, but as a female filmmaker, I appreciate when people go the extra mile to um, look for me, because it can take extra work to hire people who are less represented in the industry. And so I felt like I am a female. I want to uplift female stories and voices. And I'd also like to build a team of women, because I think, we need as many opportunities to create great work as we can. Um, so that was like the rationale. I like to hire diverse people from diverse backgrounds whenever I can. And
Awesome.
yeah, so Maya is a woman, one of the original animators is female, and then also the animator who then took over, Sebastian, his team was also all women. So we did get, I think our film is a good 70% women.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah.
What was the most challenging part of the production for you?
Um, I would say, this was made during COVID. And for me, that was challenging because I had two children at home, and everyone was remote. So I think the process wouldn't have changed that much had it not been COVID. Maya's based in New York. I'm in Austin, and Sebastian and the rest of his animation team are all in Santiago in Chile. Um, I think, just juggling everything that was going on in your daily life, and the uncertainty with COVID while you're working on a film. In some ways, it actually made COVID easier to have this project that I could work on, because it was animated and nobody had to leave their house to work on it. The audio was already recorded. I would say that on the flip side of that, it was also challenging because I was pulled in so many different directions with childcare and everything else going on. But, it was a great team. Um, if there wasn't a pandemic, maybe I would have actually gotten to meet Maya in person before the film was done. There's a lot of Zoom calls and emails, but from like a from a process standpoint, I think it was, you know, that's sort of how it would have gone, whether it was COVID or not. But it was actually a really great process. I had a great team.
As someone that works in a number of different facets of filmmaking, is the process for preparing for like a project like this, and let's say a live action documentary project, is that process different for you, and how is it different?
Yeah. Um, I would say it is different, and I don't know how to compare it. Um, I think in live act, so doing the process that I've been doing where you kind of know what the story is. I think knowing what the story is and working in animation is quite different than working in a documentary where you might have a subject matter or participants that you're following and you don't know what's going to happen. There's so much more uncertainty in doing live action documentary. And I think the certainty is what I really am drawn to. So maybe when you're like, why animation? There's more control, because you're working with like a base interview, at least in the way that I've been working, or, you could write a script and then you storyboard it, and you're able to test it along the way. Like I was able to share the audio edits with friends who are filmmakers to get feedback before I had invested much time or money. I mean, it was a lot of time, but not on the same scale. And when you are doing a live action documentary, there's just so many uncertainties. People cancel, people get sick, the event isn't as expected, things happen at the last minute. So I think it's the level of control is very different. And maybe because I work as a documentary cinematographer, you're helping me find this out in this interview, is that I think the the antidote for that lack of control is working in a different medium. Um, but I'm a Libra and I feel like I'm always seeking balance. So as much as I love being a cinematographer, I also like stepping away and doing other things. Um, I love verite cinematography where you're just feeling things happening in the moment, but I also love like knowing what's going to happen.
The
So
yin and the yang.
the yin and the yang. Yeah.
You work with a lot of difficult and heavy subject matter. How do you unwind?
Oh, how do I want that's I go to the gym twice a week. I wish it was more, but that's one thing. I honestly think having children is like not necessarily unwinding, but it's like it puts you, it totally grounds you. Once I started having kids, my time was felt much more finite. Um, but also they kind of give you like a purpose and like refine what you want in life, because when you're, like limitations inspire creativity, as they say. And so my limitation became time. And it was like, okay, what do I really want to do? And how do I really want to spend my time? So it was actually after having kids that I started making films again of my own. And so I would say that just being at home and being in that environment, it's so different from the work world that just gives me the space away from difficult topics.
I know that More Than I Want to Remember is only now starting to sort of make its way out into the world, but um, do you have another project already lined up? Is it going to be another one in this series?
I'm hoping so. I don't have one lined up. There is a person that I spoke with also in 2019 um, who ended up giving up his asylum case. And I've been thinking about making a film with him, but because of the pandemic, that has not materialized. He lives in Africa now, but he's coming back to the US soon. And I'm hoping that we can do something. But I am trying to focus on female stories for sure, but this man's life has been so incredible that it's hard not to want to make a film with him. Um, but yeah, so no definitive plans, but yeah, it's certainly on my radar to do another one.
And I mean, that's actually, I was sort of going to end there, but that leads me to another question. And that is, how do you, with so many stories to tell,
Mhm.
how do you know, or is it instinctual to focus on one particular person or one particular story?
Yeah, I think it is somewhat instinctual. When I first started this series, I was interviewing women with incredible stories, but like, films require so many, like to be a powerful film, so many things just have to click. Um, and I think Mugeni's voice was something that like I found really interesting. Just the fact that she was separated from her mom and then was able to miraculously find her again 4 years later through a friend she met in Michigan. Like things like that. It's like, how extraordinary is that? Um, and then pairing it with Maya's skill as an artist, like it felt like this was going to be a really powerful film. And that's why I think it takes me longer than I would hope to land on another project, because I think, especially in these stories, like the primary participant, their energy, their voice, the way they speak about the world is so key. It's like casting an actor. And Mugeni speaks so poetically, partially because that's how she speaks, and partially because of the way she uses the English language. And I just find all of these tiny little elements kind of come together. And I'm right now focusing on shorts. And I think you need to have things happen really quickly in a short. A lot's got to go on. They don't have time for slow buildup. So it's a really, I wouldn't say it's a formula, but it is a lot of things to consider. And I think my next big leap will be a feature, and how I'm going to tackle that, I'm not sure.
Well, we are
Maybe we
here
can talk
for
about
it.
that later.
We are here for it when you're ready. Again, congratulations on One I Want to Remember. It's a lovely film. It's a really powerful story. And I think the work that you're doing is so important in highlighting, the struggles that these women are going through. So thank you for sharing their voices with us. It's
Yes,
really,
thank
really
you,
powerful
Maria.
work. So
Thank
congratulations. Thank
you.
you.